Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Raghunatam Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Namaha Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavargadvaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Namaha Nama Hiranyaviryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave Hare Krishna. So we are again gathered to continue our discussion of Srimad Bhagvatam. We in the previous session, we focused on the first canto, second chapter, and we touched upon two key verses. And today we will be continuing our discussion and we will be touching upon other very important verses of the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagvatam. Okay, so before we begin, I would just like to, before we go into a new topic, I would like to touch upon whatever was discussed, and then we will get into the further discussion and delineation of new verses. So, I just want to give you a little bit of a recap, or rather, we want to touch upon the previous verses so that we are clear. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Okay. So in the previous session, we touched upon verses 1.2.6 and verses 1.2.7. So verse 1.2.6 is Savai Pumsam Parodharmo Yato Bhaktir Adokshaje Ahaituki Apratihata Yayatma Suprisadati. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So we specifically touched upon the first statement, supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. So we touched upon it and we said that what is dharma? Dharma is that which is the activity, the eternal activity which is done, or the activity that is done which is favorable and leads one to further our eternal position, or leads one to engage in activity that is identified with the eternal position. So dharma is activity that we perform which leads us closer to our eternal identity. So in the previous session, we specifically touched upon the fact that an identity is established, and only after an identity is established does one have the ability to think through and act under that identity. Without an identity, one cannot act. So we touched upon the fact that Arjuna had certain complications in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. His whole crisis in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita was because he was perplexed. he was going through an identity crisis. It's a word which is commonly used in modern day situations, but then no one really understands what is a real identity crisis. A real identity crisis is that which prevents us from engaging in our dharma. And dharma is that activity which leads us closer to our eternal position. That is the real identity crisis. Arjuna had an identity crisis, and in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's great mental suffering. There's great mental suffering because he's being forced to eliminate the various layers of coverings and various different identities. And it's somewhat so painful for him to give up all those identities and focus on the core identity. We go through such challenges as well, because we are also in a situation where we are fully aware through various, by the mercy of the parampara, we are fully aware of what needs to be done. However, we are also engaging in activity for most part during the day in trying to make a living, which does not quite contribute towards coming closer to the point of devotional service. Then one has to realize that if one is facing such challenges in the present day, it is because our own desires in the past were for these challenges. You see, we desired challenges. So we desired moving away from Krishna. We desired so many different things in the past, and as a consequence, we are facing challenges today in executing something that has to be very natural. You see, the whole point and training of sadhana bhakti is to pick up a soul who has moved away from his eternal occupation, retrain the person, bring this person back from an amnesia or from a state of forgetfulness, and to make them remember that their eternal occupation is to serve the senses of Krishna. So that particular activity of sadhana bhakti is all about forcing us to constantly remember our eternal identity. We dress in a certain way, okay? We celebrate things, we celebrate the functions of, Janmashtami, or we celebrate Gaud Purnima, we celebrate various other appearance days. And why do we do it? We do it very specifically with the purpose of wanting to remember our eternal identity. Because we are in an amnesiac state, we have forgotten our eternal identity, and Krishna has made these arrangements. So now Srila Prabhupada's movement, we go into a temple, we dress in a certain way, we have this whole system of dancing. In Vraja, there is dancing. There is a whole system of having a life which is centered around Krishna. So our whole life is centered around Krishna. Even if you have a deity at home, you have to be very careful. Normally you have to be very careful in terms of coming in front of the deity. How do you act in front of the deity? What do you do? And then what kind of food we eat? All of this is particularly training so that we can regain our old senses. We can regain our eternal identity. By regaining the eternal identity, we would automatically be performing action in such an identity. Action comes after assuming the identity. One has to realize that they have an eternal position in Vraja. One has to come to a complete realization that there is a specific name in Vrindavan that is belonging to them. They have to know that they have parents, they have brothers, they have sisters, they have relatives in Vraja, in the spiritual kingdom. And those relatives, those parents, those brothers and sisters, they all are centered around Krishna. Activity is centered around Krishna. So this eternal occupation is the training that we attain in sadhana bhakti. And then when sadhana bhakti matures and it becomes, we become purified and we completely attain complete knowledge of our eternal identity, the sambandha gyan becomes completely evident to us. What is my sambandha? What is this relationship? The amnesia goes away. Then automatic, spontaneous devotional service, which is raga marga, is established. One is being able to engage in spontaneous devotional service. There is no more force. There is no more force, you see. There is no such thing as someone forcing us to wake up to chant. People who have developed ruchi are able to wake up and chant and call upon the holy names without external motivation, prodding, or being accountable to a spiritual master. Now it is all spontaneous because you've known who you are, so you start acting in that identity. Okay, it is very spontaneous. People jump out of bed. There are many sadhus who jump out of bed at very, very early hours, greatly enthusiastic and eager to call upon the holy names. Right? So why do we struggle? We struggle because our own identities are not fully established. We have not understood who we are. Now, the whole purpose of bringing up this discussion is to understand that we have desires in the past, and those desires have manifested today. what is today, in every one of our lives, a part of our lives is a little bit of a distraction. We have to move away and engage in activity so that we could fulfill our duties. And a part of our life is centered around Krishna. Okay? Now, this particular mixture is because there were mixed desires in the past. It was the mixed desires of the past that has led to a scenario which is a bit mixed today. So the whole conclusion in the previous week's session was, do not have a mixed scenario. A mixed scenario or a mixed desire is dangerous because it's going to lead to an environment in the future which is also going to be mixed as it is today. It is not going to be an environment which is completely conducive for rapid advancement. It is going to be a mixed environment like we have today. It's a distraction. Every day we go to work, no doubt that what we do at work contributes towards maintaining the house. No doubt that is required. No doubt it's practical. However, it's a distraction. It is a distraction. Many of us, either candidly or in the sense that even overtly, we all would agree 100% that it is a distraction. It is a distraction, especially if you have developed taste for devotional service. One realizes that activity outside of devotional service is a distraction. We do it with a sense of duty. So the question is, what should we do today? Today, the whole purpose of coming in touch with Srimad Bhagvatam, the whole purpose of coming in touch with Sadhu Sangha is for us to be able to develop pure desires. Do not desire anything but Krishna Prema. If there is any goal to be attained by a human being, especially one who is so fortunate to have come in touch with Mahaprabhu's movement, that goal should be to attain Krishna Prema. We have been given everything we need for us to attain that goal. Everything. There's really nothing lacking for us to be able to move forward. The resources have been provided. Mahaprabhu is waiting to provide more mercy. Nityananda Prabhu is waiting to provide more mercy. So it's very important for us to get into this position of wanting to desire prema, because by constantly desiring prema and constantly desiring Krishna prema, the future environment, be it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, would be an environment which would be far more conducive for devotional service than the environment that we are in today. So there would not be this constant challenge and the struggle of wanting to turn ourselves around every time we come back home at 6 o'clock in the evening. Again, turning ourselves around at 7 or 8 or 9 whenever you leave for work. Okay? So desiring is very important. And active desiring is cultivated by active hearing. Okay? So today's topic is about active hearing. We just want to be able to talk about active hearing. Previous session, it was active desiring. And there was a qualifier. The qualifier was that we cannot really be satisfied unless we are we engage in devotional service which has qualities of apratihata and ahaituki. Okay? Krishna is adokshaja. Adokshaja is the Lord who has senses which are transcendental, or the Lord who is non-material. He has non-material senses. His senses are transcendental. So someone who is transcendentally situated, adokshaja, cannot be approached with material senses or material endeavor. So the question is, adokshaja is completely transcendental. As a consequence, he has to be approached with activity which has no material cause. So it is ahaituki. That is one definition. Okay, hetu is cause. Ahaituki is there should be absolutely no material cause. That is one definition. The second is we have no qualifications whatsoever for us to engage in pure devotional service, especially in the movement of Lord Chaitanya. We have no qualifications. However, we have been given this mercy. So it is costless mercy. It is costless. It is ahaituki. Now, the conditions that is being put forth is that it has to be uninterrupted. It has to be completely uninterrupted, and it should have absolutely no tinge of material desires. That is the meaning of apratihata ahaituki. No material desires, no desire for even liberation. Why would one seek liberation if they're completely satisfied? If one can be in this body, in this planet, in the present day, and at the chanting of the holy names can transport themselves to Vraja, and they can embrace Krishna in Vraja. They can have pastimes with Krishna and Vraja. Why would they desire liberation? Why would you desire liberation if you have the real deal? Okay, so the question is, the whole idea of devotional service which can satisfy us, it has to have the quality of apratihata. There should be no interruption. And interruptions are caused by material desires. Interruptions are caused by the desire for even liberation. Okay? Liberation overwhelms us. Okay? And that is the main definition of these words is ahaituki, apratihata. It has to be uninterrupted. It has to be unmotivated by anything material. So we establish the fact that we need to come in touch with something which is superior. How do we motivate ourselves? How do we develop a desire which would create a future, which would create a present, which would completely keep us engaged in the higher planet, in a higher system of uninterrupted devotional service? Okay, so how do we motivate ourselves? So let's talk about it today. I'm going to read a few verses and then we'll get into the discussion. So verse 7. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires costless knowledge and detachment from the world. One immediately acquires costless knowledge and detachment from the world by rendering devotional service. Okay? And this is a fact. Our behavior changes once we come in touch with the devotional service. Our behavior, our desires change quite dramatically. Our desires and our identity of being a servant of Krishna prompts us to eat in a certain way. Every one of us in Krishna consciousness, immaterial of how many years we have spent, have noticed distinct changes in our own desires. We first of all become very calm. Why does a devotee become very calm? Why do they not get very agitated? If you're agitated, there is a bigger issue behind, If you're not agitated, that is a normal state of a devotee. Why is it that we are so calm? It is because, we have come in touch with transcendence. And because we have come in touch with such powerful spiritual media, automatically we are satisfied. And the desires of wanting to engage our senses in sense gratification goes away. The moment desires go away of the future, moment desires go away, one becomes very satisfied. You see? Because those desires have been transformed into transcendental desires. We have no desires for eating. We eat certain kind of prasadam. We get satisfied. We have desires of engaging in, social interactions. Then we do engage in social interactions under the auspices or surrounding of others who are also similarly inclined in glorification of the Supreme Lord. Okay? We engage our intelligence in constantly hearing and so on and so forth. So when all of this is going on, we become very calm. So this is also experienced by even devotees who have first come in touch with Krishna consciousness even for 1 year. They experience this distinct change in their taste. They are bewildered, in one sense that they have changed. They can't really move around. They cannot relate to their old friends. They can't relate to their old activity. They are not able to, in some cases, enjoy their old music, old entertainment and so on and so forth. It is completely bewildering. Why is it so? It's because we have come in touch with the spiritual particle of Krishna. We have come in touch with the personality of Godhead Krishna, with Bhagavan. We have come in touch with prasadam. We have come in touch with glorification, the holy names, and automatically taste develops. And that taste, even in the initial stages, is quite evident. It's very evident. One does not need to explain further. Okay? If you come in touch with Krishna, you automatically change. So, which is the verse, by rendering devotional service onto the personality of Godhead, one immediately acquires costless knowledge and detachment from the world. Costless knowledge and detachment. Right? Now, let's go on to verses 8 through 20. I'm just going to read the verse and the translation because a lot of this, the substance of these verses, have already been touched upon by me in the previous session or earlier on today. Okay? And I'm going to just get to verse, I think it is 1.2.16, 16 and 17. Okay, let's read this. Dharma svanustitaha pumsham vishvaksena katashuyah notpadayed yadiratim shramaeva hi kevalam. Dharma svanustitaha pumsam vishvaksena katashuyah notpadayed ratim shramaeva hi kevalam. The occupational activities a man performs according to his position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. This was the point we were trying to establish. While we work in the corporate sector, we are fulfilling certain duties. We are not discussing that. We are not going to argue. However, the occupational activities a man performs according to his position are only so much useless labor. Shrama eva hi kevalam, if they do not provoke attraction. So they do not provoke attraction. They do not provoke attraction. We seek relief. Okay? So the point we are trying to make here is that this is the point that we were trying to make, that our activity during the day generally doesn't contribute. It is not, because it has moved away from the core of devotional service. So we do want to simplify and come back to engaging ourselves greater level and more participation in devotional service, and that can only happen if we actively desire. Okay, verse 9. Dharmasya hi apavargasya artho ratayo kalpate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smritaha. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So we have this particular strategy. The strategy is one performs dharma. By engaging in dharma as defined by the Vedas. I'm talking about Vedic dharma. I'm not talking about dharma as defined by the eternal occupation. It is eternal because one who engages in dharma is also progressing towards higher levels of consciousness, and then ultimately one develops a taste for frustration for material sense gratification and a taste for devotional service. So here, all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. What does this mean? It means that there is dharma. Dharma, by the performance of dharma, say some people perform charities, some people perform certain pujas, they perform certain vratas, right? Now we are in Navratri. There will be a whole bunch of activities situated around Navratri for people to contribute, fast, and so on and so forth. And all of this, for most part, is situated around resolving certain issues or to practically engage in dharma, which will produce certain fruits. So what do you do with fruits? The fruits of engaging in fruitive activity is subtle wealth. It is actually subtle wealth. This wealth is the currency that is required before you can convert them into dollars and pounds, as the case may be. You need subtle wealth to convert into dollars and pounds. So that is the first step. One has to perform dharma. By performing dharma, one accumulates artha. Okay? Artha is all about being able to accumulate resources. But those resources which are referred to in the Shastra as dharma, artha, is practically at the subtle level. One accumulates subtle wealth. After accumulating subtle wealth, one has currency to spend. How do they spend that currency? They spend that currency in engaging in sense gratification, kama. Dharma, artha, kama. Okay, when they become frustrated with their attempts to engage in sense gratification, then they try to look for means of liberation, that is moksha. So this is the ayana, the four different ayanas or directions of life as specified in the Vedic Shastra is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Now, Bhagavatam is very clear. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. Yes, they should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Because if the cycle of engaging in activity, even the so-called good activity of this world, and then accumulating resources at the subtle level, using those resources to convert them, because based on our desires, if we have desires, and then we are engaging in dharma, and we have subtle resources, those subtle resources can actually give us those desires. They can give us those fruits. Okay, then we have the sense gratification, kama, we engage in kama. So this activity is a cycle. It's a never-ending cycle. One accumulates wealth, at the subtle level, spends it, and engages in sense gratification. This is being condemned by the Srimad Bhagvatam because it's a cycle. One has to go through it again and again and again. Sometimes they are in a proper body, they are well situated for this. Sometimes they are in a body which does not have the ability to engage fully in sense gratification. Sometimes they are in the lower planetary systems. Sometimes we are in the higher planetary systems. Sometimes we are born on Earth. Okay? But ultimately, this is a cycle. It's a cycle. It's a dangerous cycle because we are still in the cycle of material universes. We are moving away from Krishna. So the opportunity of coming in touch with Krishna goes away when we have this attitude. Again, we are talking about desires. Cultivate proper desires of really wanting to come in touch with Krishna, really wanting to know who we are. Cultivate the desire for prema, because otherwise what will happen is that we would simply be participating in this cycle, which is condemned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kamasya nendriya pritir labho jiveta yavatam jivasya tattva jigyasam nattoya cheha karma bihi. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification, karma. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Nothing else but prema. Because if you have any other goal of wanting to engage in sense gratification, then such a goal would take your resources and then give us an environment in the future or in the near future which is not conducive to devotional service. This is the point we were trying to make even in the previous session, that one might desire an opulent position at work. And by desiring such an opulent position, we do not know how much it is going to impact our devotional service. Is it conducive for devotional service? Non-conducive for devotional service. Difficult to make up. It's very difficult to make out. So what is the safest approach? The safest approach is don't desire sense gratification. Desire prema. Our progress in material life, let it come on its own accord. If there is a promotion, if there is wealth, accept it. Use it in the service of the Lord. It's perfectly all right if you have the resources to live in a certain lifestyle. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with living opulently. But do not desire it actively, because that's a distraction. You're using up your resources and you're setting up an environment, and it is risky because you do not know whether it's going to be conducive for devotional service. See, one of the things which our spiritual master, His Divine Grace Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, when during the last few days of his, before he passed on and he left the planet, he was writing letters practically, I think, once in 2 days. And these letters were addressed to the world body of devotees. You, me, everybody, his God brothers, everybody. And in one of those letters, he said he wanted to give up the various identities that the world knew him of. He said, okay, the world knew me as John Favors. That was his legal name, John Favors. Okay, goodbye, John Favors. The world knew me as Ganasham Das. That was his name while he was initiated by Srila Prabhupada as a brahmachari. He was saying goodbye to that as well. And then the world knew him as, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He said goodbye to that as well. Okay. He said, I'm giving goodbye to all these identities, because all these identities are not who I am. I'm not any of them. I'm giving up all these identities and I want to fix myself in pure devotion because I'm reaching the end. Okay. I want to give up this responsibility of being a GBC. Why? Because if I give up this responsibility of being a GBC, being this authority, wanting to be an authority, wanting to have an administrative position, wanting to be a leader, wanting to do this, wanting to do that, I might end up becoming Lord Brahma of a different universe. What if I become Lord Brahma of a universe by desiring all of this? And if I become Lord Brahma, trillions of years would pass before I have an opportunity to see Krishna. Trillions of years would pass before I have an opportunity to be on the pastures of Vraja. Trillions of years could pass before I could be in the village of Vraja with my dearest friends and Krishna and so on and so forth. So why would I pay such a heavy price of postponing the most auspicious of transformations, the transitions of being able to go back to Goloka? I do not want to postpone it by having aspirations for anything other than prema. I want to have an aspiration of Krishna prema so that when I leave this body, I want to go back. I want to attain prema while I'm here on the planet. And by doing so, I would be transported, because once you attain prema, there is nothing for you to desire, because there will be no taste whatsoever in anything this world has to offer. Both your feet will be in the spiritual sky and your body will be here. Literally, one will be operating from the spiritual sky if they attain prema, and there will be no motivation whatsoever for anything in this world but things that are associated and connected to Krishna. In the sense, they would be devotees can act very practically, even like Prabhupada did. Devotees used to practically describe Prabhupada when he was stepping down, when he was coming down the stairway, and devotees used to describe that, they used to almost feel that his feet were not on the ground. It was almost as if Prabhupada used to glide through. He used to walk, and it used to be as if he was gliding. These are perceptions of devotees which are very auspicious, because, this is like a demonstration of what is to come if one attains the highest state of Krishna consciousness. Why? Because, the person is not in this planet. He is operating, or she is operating from the spiritual sky. One can operate from the spiritual sky while the physical body is here. They're already in a liberated state. We call it Jivan Mukta. They are liberated while being in this body. The senses are liberated. They are in a spiritual body. Being in a spiritual body, they have no hindrance. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur could, spend 2 hours in the day sleeping and function for 22 hours very efficiently, because he was in a spiritual body. The effect of the body, the spiritual body was not giving any hindrance. Srila Haridas Thakur could do it. Srila Haridas Thakur could spend 24/7 chanting the holy names. He was in a spiritual body. There were no constraints. The body was not giving them trouble, saying, okay, you got to sleep, you got to eat. No, it was a spiritual body. So the point we want to make here is that there is a real risk if you don't learn to manage your desires. And that is what Srimad Bhagvatam is all about. We're going to learn how to manage our desires. We're going to desire Krishna, wanting his association. All right, text 11. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So the goal of life is to attain this. That is being established. Now, text 12. Tashraddadana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyanti atmani chatmanam bhaktya shutagritaya. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Well equipped with knowledge and detachment. Once you become knowledgeable, what is knowledge which is being referred to here? The knowledge that is being referred to here is Sambandha Gyan. Once the Sambandha Gyan matures, then Abhideya or action cannot be mundane. It will be transcendental. Okay? So automatically there will be detachment. Detachment from matter, attachment to spirit. Text 13. Ataha pumbir dvijashreshta varnashrama vibhagashaha swanustitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. O best among twice born, though best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. The goal of life is prema. The goal of life is to please Krishna. Okay? There's nothing else. So immaterial of the varna, immaterial of the ashrama, the whole purpose of varnashrama is for us to be able to be Krishna-centered and to give pleasure to the senses of Krishna. And that is the goal of life, any occupation. Since our occupations in modern day are not so conducive, they are not so direct, then one has to have proper desires today for them to be able to attain a position where they will be able to render more direct, more involved devotional service. You see? That is the point. Cultivate desires for devotional service. Cultivate desires for simplicity so that we would be able to simplify our existence and focus on Krishna consciousness. See, the problem exists when we are sadhakas. The problem does not exist if one has attained the sadhya. For Bhaktivinoda Thakur to be a full-fledged magistrate is not an issue. It is not an issue at all. Okay? One can be a king. For instance, in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Pandavas are extraordinary devotees of the Lord. So executing their day-to-day functions is not a distraction for them to remember Krishna. So beyond a certain level, it is not an issue. Being a sadhaka, however, one constantly has to endeavor to create an environment which is conducive. And that requires desiring. If we instead constantly desire something else to happen, we may not know if whatever we are desiring is even conducive. We may think it is, but we don't know. So the safest is, Krishna, engage me in pure devotional service. Let me have a simplified existence. Give me whatever is required for me to execute pure devotional service. Take away whatever needs to be taken away, which is a distraction, or which could be a distraction. This prayer is very important on a daily basis. Why? Because one understands that our own desires, we don't desire to be with Krishna. We have so many different things, agendas, little agendas. I'm not saying devotees are crooked, but it's a fact of life that we are exposed to the environment, and in our objective to solve the complexities, we begin desiring something or the other, without knowing whether that in itself is going to impact us positively or negatively in devotional service. It's a challenge. So it is better for us to be very clear that we have only one desire, which is to attain prema, which is to attain the point of being able to chant the pure name. That is our desire. Whatever else is required has to be conducive to that. So if we constantly have a safe desire in mind and remind ourselves of the safe desire, everything else that happens will slowly, steadily align itself to that particular desire. Then our resources are going to be aligned. Everything is going to get aligned properly. So that is the point we are trying to make, which is what the point which the Bhagavatam is trying to make. Sorry. Text 14. Tasmadekena manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Patihi Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Deha Pujyascha Nityadam. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. Constantly hear about, Shravanam, glorify, Kirtanam, remember, Smaranam, worship, Vandanam, personality of Godhead. So this is Manmanabhava Madbhakto Madhyajivam Namaskuru, right? It is the same thing, 18.65, Bhagavad Gita. One pointed attention, one should constantly hear. When you use the word constant, 24/7. How is that possible? So now text 15. Yad anudyasena yuktah karma granti nibandhanam chindanti ko vidastasya ko nakuryat kataratim. With sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma. Reactionary work, it is. There are just way too many reactions to having desires that are not connected to Krishna. Don't cheat ourselves thinking that our desires are connected to Krishna. We don't know. Accept in the environment, do your very best. Accept the results that are given, because we don't want to really cultivate deep desires. Accept the environment, act upon it efficiently, let the results come on their own, accept them and act upon them. Okay? without any distraction. Without any distraction. Otherwise, we would be engaging in the chanting of the holy names, and instead using the potency of the holy names and whatever we accumulate by chanting the holy names, we will be using the credit which is coming from that to fulfill desires which ultimately may not be conducive. And it is reactionary. It causes reactions. You know, if you're going to be enjoying the fruits, it causes reactions. Oh, I want this. I want that. I want this. I want that. Okay, let me work towards it. Let me get that. Once you get that, then there's a reaction. That reaction, you again have to come back to clear up. Okay, so how long do we want to be a sadhaka? How long do we want to be a sadhaka in unfriendly conditions? It's like being on the battlefield. Every nation which enters into war wants to end the war at the earliest. This is battle strategy. Okay, read about every book which has been written about, war by generals. Colin Powell, he was a Secretary of State, but before that he was a 4-star general. He was a Joint Chief of Staff of the U.S. Armed Forces. He wrote his book. Everybody writes a book. It's important for them to write a book when they reach such levels of a career. And the key strategy of the U.S. forces is to use overwhelming force when they're coming in touch with an enemy. And this strategy was also used by Ravana. You see, it is an ancient strategy that you go with overwhelming force because you do not want to expose the nation to prolonged battle. You want to finish things. Use such force that the enemy has no choice. Okay? Apply that principle to our situation. Every day is a battle. How long do you think we're going to last on the battlefield? Isn't it important for us to contain, accumulate, and put all our resources and then get rid of this problem at once and for all? Okay? When I'm saying how long we're going to be on the battlefield, I'm talking about lifetimes. How long do we want to be on the battlefield as a sadhaka? Oh, I did sadhana for 1 year. Now I'm going to do sadhana for, one lifetime. Perhaps, I'm not going to do sadhana so wonderfully. I can come back and I'll catch up the next lifetime because Krishna promises so, right? And then the next lifetime, you're going to come back to the battlefield again. Is that battlefield conducive? Material war, people who are materialists, they have figured it out that you cannot be on the battlefield for too long. You cannot. You'll be draining morale, you'll be draining resources, you will be draining, normalcy. Peace is required. The materialists also understand that peace is required to thrive. We need our resources to be used towards Krishna consciousness. How long do you want to be on the battlefield where you're going to be fighting with the senses? Oh, the senses are attracted to this, they're attracted to that. Why? Because they're exposed to different environments. They're exposed to so many different environments. They're exposed to objects and they're attracted. Oh, it's a battle. When I sit in the morning, I'm distracted. When I sit in the evening, I'm distracted. I cannot chant my rounds. I can't read. I can't do anything. Why? This is a battlefield. How long do you want to be in the battlefield? That's a determination which devotees have to actively consider. That's why desiring to be out of the battlefield, winning and going back should be a priority. Desiring is very important. Do not keep making arrangements to be on the battlefield. For us, this is a battlefield. Never ever have, any mistaken notion that we are on a battlefield. We are battling our senses every day. They're distracted. Never make an assumption that you're on safe grounds. Do you think we are on safe grounds? No. We are not. We are battling. How long? We can't. We can't really last for long. Okay? We can't really assume that tomorrow is going to bring a better conducive condition. So it is better for us to desire that the war ends, the battle ends, my senses are completely conquered, they are purified, they can be engaged. So that is the point. Okay? The materialists have figured this out. Devotees also have to learn to apply that. So with sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work by remembering the personality of Godhead. Smaranam. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? Who will not pay attention to this glorious message which allows us to cut the knot which binds us to this world? Okay? So I'm going to stop here because it's 45 minutes. And I want to see if there are any questions, then I could take those questions. We'll continue again in the following session. I was wanting to go all the way through to 1.2.20, but I will reserve it for the next session on Monday, because there's a nice amount of matter which we can share, so we'll reserve it for them. In the next few verses, the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually telling us how we can develop proper hearing, because Shravanam, the act of hearing, is so important, so critical. What is it one needs to do for us to be able to engage in Shravanam? Because there cannot be Kirtanam without Shravanam. There cannot be Smaranam without Kirtanam and Shravanam. There cannot be any Smaranam. And Smaranam, remembrance, constant remembrance, is required for us to be able to move forward. Okay? So I'm going to reserve the next session for the remaining verses. I want to stop with this verse, which is verse 1.2.15. Okay? So any questions? Okay, so I don't see any questions coming so far. I can't wait forever. So for the next session, I would request you to read right through 1.2.20, which is first canto, second chapter, 20th verse. Okay, 1.2.20. Go from here right onto then, and then perhaps take notes and develop questions, and we could hopefully address them when we meet next on Monday. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.